Destro's returned, and he's back in black. We're going to dive in deep with the most recent G.I. Joe classified release of Destro and the Iron Grenadier Despoiler in this week's Spotlight, with action shots, comparisons, display tips, and a full review. Is this version of Destro the best one yet? Find out inside, only at Heroic Nonsense. Let's go. The cunning industrialist and ruthless leader of the Iron Grenadiers is back, and he couldn't have made a more triumphant return. Destro has always been an iconic Cobra character, from his deep imposing voice and unforgettable silver mask to his calm and calculating demeanor. He stood at the forefront of the Cobra Legions as one of its most enigmatic leaders. But Destro was never meant to rule from the sidelines, and so he transformed his personal guard into the Iron Grenadiers and returned clad in a new black and gold uniform, which, in my opinion, has become even more iconic than his original look. I have to say, this G.I. Joe classified release of Iron Grenadier Destro, along with his equally iconic Despoiler, has brought back all those feelings of awe and excitement from when I was a kid. Not only that, but we finally have a leader for our Iron Grenadiers collection, something we waited way too long for. Now let's head on into the spotlight so I can show you why I think this is one of the best G.I. Joe classified releases to date, and why he's a must-have for your collection. So here he is, Destro in all his glory. And when I say all his glory, I mean it, because this version of Destro looks exactly like how you'd imagine a Scottish lord living in a castle and dealing in arms with his own personal regal army should. Everything from the shine of his black uniform to his perfectly designed mask to his gold emblazoned accessories is perfect. I absolutely love everything about this figure, and I'm not just saying that. I really think the designers did an impeccable job at recreating this version of Destro that looks even better than the two previous versions we've gotten so far in the classified line, and I'm going to tell you exactly why right now. This figure looks like royalty, and that's exactly what I'd have expected for Iron Grenadier Destro. Just from initial quick impressions, it's easy to see how impressive this figure looks. From what I can tell, the entirety of Destro's mold is new, recreating that original look from the late 80s, with his ornamental gold studs, imposing decorative finial, and red cape hanging off his right shoulder. Of course, if you're going to make a new Destro figure, you have to get his mask right, and they not only got it right, but took it to the next level with this completely new head sculpt, which is my favorite of the bunch, and which I'll explore more in the comparison section. The shoulder armor looks incredible, the design, the shine, the color, especially with that ceremonial shoulder crest, it's all there and in perfect detail. They even went all in on the smaller details like his red ascot and skull adorned belt that just completely adds to his impeccable look. But if the regal, calm-looking Destro doesn't do it for you, you get the choice of a second head, which is equally as impressive. It's got a bit of a vampiric look to it here in this pose, but trust me when I say it'll all come together when I recreate some display ideas that match the intensity perfectly. Really amazing detail throughout, down to the textured and ornamented scabbard and gold skull on the boots. From this angle, you get a good sense of how impressive that tri-pronged epaulette is, truly an act of genius from the original designers. One of the best, if not the best, additions to this figure has to be that shield. I mean, this thing feels like it should be its own release with all of that intricate detailing. The head and dagger mold is just perfect and actually feels like it has some backstory as part of Destro's history and heritage that ultimately inspired the Iron Grenadier symbol. Another nice callback to the original figure, though majorly updated for this release, is his gun wrapped around his leg, which as we'll see in a bit is also really nicely designed. Almost as iconic as his new gold mask and shoulder finial is his red cape hanging off his back, with the designers opting for a cloth type material, which I think actually works quite well, especially since the cut allows you to put it draped over Destro's back in multiple styles. It attaches separately to that aiguillette, which can be untabbed from his back. It can also be displayed from the front in some different configurations, all adding to the aristocratic look of Destro's uniform. There aren't as many accessories as you might think for a figure at this level, but the ones that do come with this set are fantastic additions. You can see here all the amazing details incorporated into each piece, including his gold encrusted revolver and that amazing greatsword, which we'll look at in more detail shortly. As for posability, he's fairly easy to pose in a walking position, though I will note given his pointed up boots that it causes a slight balance issue, but barely noticeable. Lots of opportunity to have fun posing this figure for displays given the different types of accessories he comes with, including this one of him pulling out a sword. This one here though has to be my favorite. If you want to recreate it, the trick here is to place the blade in between one of the prongs of his epaulette and it will easily keep it in place. I immediately thought of this one as well, a more standard pose with a great sword, but one that completely works for this figure. Now this one has to be my other favorite of the bunch, and as promised earlier, highlights how the second head works with such an expressive action shot. Make sure to stick around until the end because I'll show you exactly how you can use this pose and some great display ideas. Bonus, his shield actually has 2 lasers hidden on the inside with 2 holes to add in any of your standard small blast effects, and it actually looks quite good. I love the idea of Destro having this hidden weapon built into his decorative shield. It fits his MO to a T. I didn't think I'd like this bonus use as much as all the other accessories, but honestly the designers made it work. The head sculpted into his shield gives it a very eerie look. So my final impression, this is 100% my favorite version of Destro so far. I really don't have any issues with any of it. Actually, I think every part of the design is extremely well done and well proportioned. The paint applications look great, the head sculpt is spot on, uniform looks incredible, and the accessories are just perfect for a Scottish lord of his stature. I highly recommend getting the set, even just for the figure. So I was never really a fan of the original Despoiler from the 80s. It was fun and all, but I could have gone either way on it. It wasn't a vehicle I felt I absolutely needed. I expected they'd likely do the same type of set for the classified release of Iron Grenadier Destro, and lo and behold, we now have a Despoiler for classified, but it's way more impressive for this type of vehicle than I expected. It's definitely a fun one and perfect for our first outing for Destro as part of the Iron Grenadiers. Otherwise, we'd have to wait for something like the Demon, which I'm not sure we'll ever get, or some repaints of Cobra vehicles, which I'd love. It's also perfect for Destro, the same way Serpentor has his air chariot. I came up with some cool ideas with one in particular that I think will be perfect for displaying with the Iron Grenadiers. But let's first start with the review, and there's a fair amount of detailing and things to see with this release. We're definitely getting into the more sci-fi area of G.I. Joe at this point, and it shows. This isn't your standard military vehicle by any means. Taking that aside though, it's surprisingly sleek and definitely built to destroy things with 2 larger missiles and 6 smaller ones on the wings, and a double-barreled turret up front with 2 more mini missiles right above it. And it looks like it's built for speed as well, with not 2 but 4 gold-plated thrusters on the back and 2 more landing ones. The Despoiler's futuristic style really works well with the generally black color scheme punctuated with gold accents throughout, including on the stabilizers, plus those gold Iron Grenadier decals look absolutely amazing. Really nicely detailed cockpit with a 2-handled yoke and on-screen display which doesn't light up, though you'd almost expect it to. There's this very English, or should I say Scottish looking regal lion on the wings, which was totally unexpected and a really nice touch, and that faded vehicle designation looks incredible. I gotta say, for a nondescript type vehicle, it's very cool looking, looks like a bit of a Stingray from this angle, which also showcases how big it is as compared to the man of the hour himself. As for how Destro looks like inside, it is what it is. I'd consider it similar to Serpentor's flying chariot, a quick personal vehicle for Destro to get around the battlefield in when needed, which is perfect for a leader like Destro who doesn't have time to waste and needs to get the job done. I actually think it kinda looks cool, almost like a sci-fi roof-down Iron Grenadier Corvette. Given the size and weight of the Despoiler, plus the fact that the undercarriage is so smooth, there really isn't a place you can stick a stand in like you might be able to for other vehicles. So I ended up having to use 2 of my NECA stands, which actually lines up perfectly with the shape of the Despoiler given the way they position at an angle, which you can see here. I suspect there are other stands which could work as well, though not sure you'd be able to use only one unless it had a wide enough platform. I admit, on its own, it doesn't look the best, though from far you'd probably not notice the stands, which is why I will suggest an easy way to help cover them up in your displays. For now though, having it in the air so to speak is definitely the way you'd want to display this thing, especially because of all the fun things you can do with it, which as you can see here centers around the turret and the multiple tabs you can use to add in some weapons effects. I love that you can also use the smoke effect that some of the figures come with to give the Despoiler the appearance that it just finished firing. Though I will note that all the effects I tried do not fit perfectly in these holes, as I think the holes are not perfectly matched up to the size of the tabs. As there are multiple ports, you can really have some fun with using different colors as well to give it a bit more dynamics. Now where these ports really shine are in relation to the thrusters, which perfectly fit the thruster effects that come with the likes of the HasLab vehicles. Hopefully they'll find more ways to incorporate these effects with other more mainstream releases, since these are extremely useful for vehicles with these types of ports, allowing you to create some very cool combinations that all look fantastic on the Despoiler. I used 2 slightly different versions of these effects, 2 coming from the Rattler and 2 from the Dragonfly, which if you look closely give off a nice contrast and again makes this setup a bit more dynamic. But what to do about the landing thrusters underneath the Despoiler? Well, luckily they also have similar ports, which means you can give the Despoiler a more static look, as if it was hovering above the ground, versus the attack mode version. Though you can use all of the ports to have a combined look that just gives off a ton of energy. All in all, a great not so little vehicle that does actually work well for Destro as leader of the Iron Grenadiers, and as we'll see shortly, gives a lot of presence to your displays. Now let's take a look at how Destro fits into the wider world of G.I. Joe Classified, and specifically as part of the Iron Grenadiers. But we'll start first with a quick look at the different versions of Destro we have so far, all with their own very unique looks. While each one has its own time and place within your collection, I have to say, in my opinion, that Iron Grenadier Destro is my favorite. While the other two previous versions share the same head sculpt, the designers went all in with this new version and completely knocked it out of the park. He just looks so menacing in his Iron Grenadier mask. I'd love to see a silver version of him one day using this head sculpt as well. In the end, I just think the black and gold look and the overall sculpt fits him the best, even giving him a bit of height, which is nice. Plus, he comes with his own vehicle and army, which the other Destros are sorely missing. And man, does he look good with his Iron Grenadiers. If any team was meant to be displayed together, this would be it. Look how amazing these guys in their matching styles, motifs, and colors look together. And it's just going to keep getting better and better as we get more versions of classified figures updated to fit into the Iron Grenadier army. I even appreciate the way Darklon looks in this setup, and you just can't beat Metalhead. I never got to specifically review him, but I really love that figure. I also really like the way they tied the emblems on the figures to Destro Despoiler. It's very cool when they do that, especially when the symbols are as cool as this one. I hope they'll do more of that for future Iron Grenadiers. Now let's take a deeper dive into Darklon and how he compares to the new Destro, which I know is a bit of a contentious issue. Now having them next to each other, I actually like the way Darklon has his own style and feel to him as Destro's distant cousin. But to help sell in the story, let me highlight some parts of his uniform and gear that tie these two figures together, as they do actually share a lot of the same ideas executed in different ways. They each sport a bit of a plated armor look, Darklon going for a more arm crest styled shoulder guard with Destro's being a bit more polished. They also each have their own unique sword, which again plays off of their aristocratic background as lords coming from the Destro and Darklon clans. Darklon also sports a decorative but deadly knife sheathed on his leg, which could also be compared conceptually to the formal sword Destro carries on his waist, since Destro's greatsword probably compares best to the one on Darklon's back. Either way, they are obviously all artifacts from their respective clans, which makes these guys perfect to display together. As for the Despoiler, when I said earlier it was big, I wasn't kidding. I had no idea before opening it how big it was, and to be honest, looks even bigger in person than it does here. It really is a nicely sized vehicle that will definitely take up a prominent spot in your Iron Grenadier display. And I further think it actually looks quite good as Destro's version of Serpentor's personal vehicle, which I'll get to in a moment. Some more comparisons, this time from the side. I'd say it falls somewhere in the middle of the smaller and mid-sized vehicles, though to be honest, the wings, which can't really be appreciated here, make it seem immense. While we're not covering display ideas just yet, this actually makes for an amazing one, which I suspect will look even better once we add in King Cobra Commander and his throne. While the Despoiler is a bit bigger than Serpentor's chariot, the two look fantastic next to each other. And I could see them both lording over the Cobra and Iron Grenadier troops together, similar to the cinematic shot I showcased of them at the start of this spotlight. And by the way, this is my favorite pose for Destro on his Despoiler, which I'm sure you've noticed I've been using quite a bit of throughout this spotlight already. And I'll show you exactly how to create a stable version of this for your displays in the upcoming design ideas section. But let's first end with a quick look at how the classified Iron Grenadier Destro compares to the original from the late 80s. I have no idea how I got this one, as I actually don't own the original Despoiler, but glad I at least have the figure. I know there have been some complaints online arguing that the classified version of Iron Grenadier Destro looks a bit less detailed, but I honestly don't think so. I think, if anything, the classified version has more detail and accents and balances the look of the original nicely with the updates. The biggest difference is really around his left leg, which had a different design from the right leg and was not replicated in the classified version. Other than that, I think the classified Destro is a really great update and homage to the original. I like to add in bonus content when I can, so here's a bit of one showcasing some of my original Iron Grenadiers with their updated classified versions. I'm throwing in a few more just for the hell of it, since it's kind of fun to think of who or what might come out next, and also because my other 80s Iron Grenadiers have fallen apart and need new bands. And to cap it all off, 90s Destro, which I suspect might be one we get down the road. I'll note that he actually carries over some of the Iron Grenadier design in his legs, which I never noticed before. So I thought this part would be a bit tougher to come up with ideas for, since we are only really scratching at the surface of this sub-team, and there are no other vehicles yet. But I did come up with some pretty cool and fun ideas that I think you'll enjoy and will definitely look good in your displays. Starting with my favorite individual pose of the bunch, which I'll then incorporate into some larger shots. As I promised earlier, I'm starting with the pose itself so you can get a good look at how I position the arms, hands, legs, and sword to accurately recreate this image. Next, we'll add in Darklan, who I positioned unsheathing his sword. I think you can probably see where I'm going with this one. This is definitely a Destro out for revenge. Now all we have to do is insert him into a scene, in this case surrounded by Cobra Commander's troops and the Crimson Guard. The question is, who's he coming for? If you guessed the commander himself, then you're right, and I decided to use Cobra Commander in his battlesuit since it lines up with this era. Put it all together and you have a great little action display which you can build out further. You can also create some nice backstory, like for example, this Cobra Commander being an imposter, or Cobra Commander having done something personal to Destro or to the honor of his clan. Here's the same shot, but from a different angle. You can see I threw in some higher ups in the Cobra Command like Storm Shadow, who is always great for displays like these. Honestly, a great pose for Destro that totally works for showcasing the tension that exists between Cobra and the Iron Grenadiers. While we're on the topic of using swords for displays, here's a quick one shot of Destro and the Iron Grenadiers preparing for battle that is also perfect for general displays using Destro's personal guard. Earlier, I showcased my favorite pose of Destro with his Despoiler, which had Destro in this action shot. And in my opinion, is the coolest way to have Destro displayed with his Despoiler, in the heat of battle, leading his troops almost like a king on an ancient battlefield. This pose is perfect for use with a classified stand, which is completely hidden when placed inside the cockpit and provides much needed stability. You can see here the exact positioning and placement of Destro on the stand, so it's easy to place inside the Despoiler and in order to allow him to easily balance standing up this way. And what you get is a very cool, exciting display idea which can be further elevated on some stands. While on the topic of stands, we saw earlier how I used some stands to raise the Despoiler off the ground, which can further be used with some blast effects to create a really dynamic look. However, you might not want the stands themselves to be too visible. The easy solution is to simply add in your Iron Grenadier troops around Destro, strategically placing them in your display to hide as much of the stands as possible. As long as you can get it off the ground, you basically have a display using the Despoiler in the way it was meant to be used. You can also add in the blast effects from your weapons and play around with the positioning of the turret to really get a very exciting action shot for Destro and his Iron Grenadiers. Another great display idea I was really excited to explore was this one of having the various Cobra leaders with their personal guards. In this case, using the Cobra Law Royal Guards for Serpentor, the Iron Grenadiers for Destro, and the Crimson Guard for Cobra Commander. It's just such a great visual and I feel is pretty unique for your collection. King Cobra Commander will totally fit in once released. But for now, I switched him up with the original CC, which is also great if you'd rather go old school or don't have battle armor Cobra Commander. You can also replace each of their personal guard with some bats since we have various versions now that totally work in the same way, here using the Crimson Bats, the Iron Grenadier Bats, and the original Bats as perfect attachés. Now let's move back into some more story-based ideas perfect for Destro and his Iron Grenadiers. And what better way to showcase this than with Destro providing Cobra Commander with some top secret designs locked up in a gold-plated briefcase, which came with the classified Prophet Director Destro figure. If you pull back a bit, you can start adding in a bunch more figures, my preference in this case being the Cobra Troopers. I also love the idea of using the Despoiler as the place of business for this transaction. Now this idea takes the previous one and changes it up a bit, and has become my favorite of the bunch because of the figures I'm using and the backstory. In this case, Destro and Cobra Commander are exchanging money in the briefcase for some weapons packed away in the crate that comes with the recently released Ramp Rats, who I absolutely love. You can see one of them hooking up the Stinger to the crate while Darklon and Firefly complete the transaction. I did a full spotlight on the awesome Ramp Rats, which you can see here or linked below. Check it out because I had some really great build ideas there as well. I initially thought the Twilight Guards would look best, but in the end I switched them back out for the Cobra Troopers. I don't know, they just always seem to work great for these types of displays. Plus, I love using the Cobra Stinger driver as well, so this group of Cobra Troopers makes for a perfect setup for a build like this. If you guys have a different idea for a deal between Cobra and the Iron Grenadiers that might be fun to explore next time, let me know in the comments section. Finally, one last idea I had using the Steel Core Sentry Modular Defense Post that I just recently reviewed on the channel as well. There were two main reasons I wanted to try this one out. One, because I love the idea of Destro on his Despoiler overseeing a battle against the Joes, and two, because I really wanted to use my Iron Grenadier bats climbing up the walls of the Joe base. Such a great visual for a bat. It's also the perfect setting for showcasing the unhinged metalhead launching all of his missiles. As we start getting in some more Iron Grenadier vehicles and figures, I plan on growing these displays even more. What Iron Grenadier figure, vehicle, or playset would you like to see next? Share below so we can launch into the discussion. Alright, it's that time again to start wrapping things up with a look at the packaging. Interesting that they went with a mix this time of art and photography since the castle and troops look drawn in. How great would it be if they ever made a modular castle for these guys? Really nice side panel art of Destro here. It really pulls you in and highlights how great his Iron Grenadier design is. Some nice tech specs for the back panel and some instructions on how to build your despoiler, highlighting some of the more exciting elements of the vehicle. So that's it for this week's G.I. Joe Classified Focus Spotlight of Destro and the Iron Grenadier Despoiler. What do you guys think of this set and who's your favorite Destro? Sound off below. Lots of pre-orders went up for Yojo June, so really excited about those new vehicles and hopefully we'll get a big announcement next week. For now, thanks for watching and remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Draft 4!